This is an Extra 106.3 podcast. To hear more live and local content like this, tune into 106.3 FM or download the Extra 106.3 app.
We welcome Dr. Rich McCormick, representative of Georgia's 7th District.
Our representative, sir.
He is our representative, exactly right. I didn't want to brag about it, because then it sounds like we just got him on because he represents the both of us. And that's not the case. We just love talking to Dr. Rich and know there's so many things that are happening in America right now. But I got to tell you, Dr. McCormick, the thing that stands out to me is how much Donald Trump is winning for America, and obviously you and the Congress and the Senate, you all have a big part in that. But we are winning at a level that I don't know that I've ever seen. Do you feel that way? Do you see that as the interaction with people? Do they feel that too that you talk to?
I do, and I'm. It's funny because I'm a pessimist by nature. I mean, that way you're never disappointed. But when I look at the things that Donald Trump has done and how he's outside the box, how he's done things that we've been worried about for decades. I remember growing up as a kid and hearing about trade deficits and trying to wrap my arms around that in a simple way. And what he's done individually, I mean, even collectively to countries around the world to bring them to the table and actually give us better. I mean, it's Trump 2.0. I mean, the first presidency went well. This one's just killing it. And what he's going to do to affect the deficit, what he's going to do to affect the economy, what he's going to do to set us up for a lot of success is just tremendous. Although we do have some things that are looming over us that I don't know how we're going to get out of, and that's the debt and deficit, which we can talk about how tariffs are going to affect that and how it's not going to affect it. But overall, I mean, he's getting an A-plus rating from just about everybody, and the Democrats don't even know what to criticize right now. They're just making stuff up.
Congressman Dr. Rich McCormick is our guest on the Morning Extra. Let's go right there, sir. Because this tariff policy, when it was coming into effect, and I remember on April 1st, you know, I'm somebody with a couple of business degrees. I said, I'm going to wait and see. Let's see how this plays out. Some of the analysts were talking about this is going to sink the economy, yet we're seeing this record number of revenue that keeps coming in. You know, what is the future of this policy, and how has it affected kind of the outlook of what the Trump plans are when it comes to the economy?
Well, for those people who don't understand how tariffs work, it basically is a tax. It's just a question of who's paying for it. Technically, so far, businesses kind of eaten the inflationary cost. In other words, they're taking it out of their profits. And so we haven't really had to pay for it. Now, that may change over time, and it may become inflationary, but so far, all it's done is produce a ton of surplus. They're projecting about $300 billion in extra revenue into our budget, which is something we need because right now we have about a $3 trillion deficit per year, which is horrible. And it's going to go up next year, unfortunately, even with a big, beautiful bill, by about $416 billion more of deficit spending. Now, a lot of part of that is the SALT, which, for people who don't know, is basically when you can deduct your state taxes from your federal taxes up to a certain point, and we just increased that up to $40,000. That comes at a hefty price tag of over $300 billion over the next several years. And but it's something we have to look at because that's going to affect us big time down the road. But so far, the tariffs have been nothing but a great benefit to the way we look at our budget.
Dr. Rich McCormick on the Morning Extra, Tug and Los until 10. Dr. McCormick, you talked about the deficit, so let's talk about that because yesterday Jerome Powell did not, and the Fed did not drop the interest rate, and Donald Trump spoke to that specifically, saying $365 billion if they would have just dropped it 1 point over a year. If they were playing, because this feels like very political to me, and I'm no expert on the Fed, I'm no expert on economics, but it feels very political to me. This was the only way that they could limit Donald Trump, only way that they could limit his success. And then it really speaks to what you're talking about, paying off that debt for the United States, but then for people that have credit cards and want to buy houses too.
That's the full effect of deficit and debt. When you talk about the interest payment we're paying, which is over $1 trillion, in just paying debt on that almost $37 trillion of debt that we owe. And the Federal Reserve, for the people who don't understand how that works, is neither federal nor is it reserve, and it's not going to bail us out in the end. We, the States people are going to bail out the United States. When you drop the interest rate, you pay less interest. It also helps you buy your houses and all those things. The thing that Powell's going to lean on, and I don't think he's going to be around much longer, by the way, but what he's trying to lean on is that he doesn't want to superheat the economy. I mean, we do have a lot of money that's going to be coming back into the United States. President Trump's doing a great job of that, by the way. That's going to produce a ton of jobs. But the other side of that too is when you've been downgraded twice in 2 years, which we have been, we've had two agencies that grade each currency, and because we're so far in debt right now, that actually has affected our currency and our ability to borrow from other people. Now, if you drop it too low and people don't get the interest, then they're not going to borrow. They're not going to give us the money. They're not going to lend us the money to borrow, such as Japan. Japan has about $1 trillion they've invested in the United States in Treasury bonds. And that kind of buoys up our debt problem. But right now we're kind of upside down where you have higher interest of the short term than the long term, and that can cause some problems too. So it's not as simple as people think. And there are definite advantages to having a lower interest rate, but there are also some things we need to be careful of. So these are 10-pound brain kind of people going at war, and it's going to be interesting. The good news is, like I said, there are hundreds of billions, actually trillions of dollars going to be coming back into the United States economy, invested by other countries that are going to help us grow our economy, grow our jobs, and that's going to help us dig our way out of this deficit spending also.
Congressman Dr. Rich McCormick is our guest on the Morning Extra. Let's talk about your line of work. The BBB gets through, big victory for Donald Trump. What is next on the horizon for the Republicans in Congress?
Well, I think now that we're done with that, we have a reconciliation package to do. We're going to, at the appropriations bill, we already passed the defense side, which is a huge spending part. It's about 15% of our budget. But we have 12 appropriations bills to pass in order to not do another CR, continuing resolution. If we do a CR, it's essentially the Nancy Pelosi era budget all over again. We haven't done anything substantial to cut that. And so that's the big fear. And mark my words, it's not going to be an easy lift. Even though we have the House, the Senate, and the White House, not passing ACR is actually a really hard thing to do, as it turns out, because the Republicans haven't passed something other than a CR in decades. So to do it the right way is going to be a tough lift, and that's where President Trump is very good at twisting arms, and hopefully we get it done. But one thing we cannot do is default to make sure we don't shut down and freeze out the government, because that could be catastrophic to our economy also.
Dr. Rich McCormick on the Morning Extra, Tug and Los. I want to ask you about something that could really benefit, because you talked about how Donald Trump's having to twist arms and get things done. Redistricting. We see it out in Texas. There could be some redistricting done there. Greg Abbott's talked about it, and the Republicans could gain 5 seats in the House. Boy, that would be beneficial. Down in Florida, same thing. Do you see that as something that we could do in Georgia? Is there something you could do to help push that along? Maybe put Georgia in a better position to have more representation?
So that is a state issue, not a federal issue. We have to be very careful not to cross lines, and I hate to weigh in on this too much. And it's a double-edged sword, by the way. Remember when Newt Gingrich was one of the only Republican congressmen in Georgia, they tried to redistrict him out. They ended up with 4 Republicans instead of 1. So we have to be careful we don't get too aggressive, because, yes, it may benefit you in the short term, but in the long term it may lose you a lot of seats too. Texas is probably the easiest place to do, because it's a huge population, the biggest state of population that has a Republican-leaning population. But remember, it wasn't that long ago that Ted Cruz had some issues in that election, and we got to be careful. That's all I'm saying. I have several friends. As a matter of fact, Texans are very close to me. Ronnie Jackson, Beth Hendine, Pat Fallon, some really good friends of mine that are down there. They're not too worried about most districts are going to be fine, but there's a couple of them. By gaining 5 seats, you're going to make them very vulnerable in the near future, and so that's just something that we have to be aware of. In Georgia, we kind of maximize our potential for the future. I think we've stabilized it. We can maybe eke out another one, but once again, careful what you wish for, because you get it now, and later on you're going to be paying for that. We've seen that in Georgia, both for and against us in the past. So we just have to be really diligent in letting the states kind of run that. I know President Trump is going to put his thumb on the scales. There are some states like Florida that their Republican base has expanded massively by double digits. Texas is not quite as sure-footed as that, but you just have to be picky and choosy which states we do that with. And realize, too, California has some very good laws to balance that out when they reapportion, but they may change those laws in response to what's happening in Texas and Florida. So they may gain some Democrat seats there.
New York and California both looking at doing something very similar, and that would benefit Democrats, Lowe's.
Dr. Rich McCormick is our guest right here on the Morning Extra. I want to ask about, we're looking to get, obviously, the expenditures from this government under control and to re-privatize this government where there's more money in there for the private sector. And I continuously hear this from younger people about what this will mean for their future. Being that the young people broke so hard for Donald Trump, young men especially, how much of a focus is there, or is there people in Congress realizing that this economy has to start serving younger people better than it has been?
That's exactly right. And it's funny to watch the Democrats try to find their footing with young people. They're not connecting at all, and they're picking all the wrong fights. I think the American public has kind of woken up to this idea that the economy is the most important thing that has ever driven the American population. When Bill Clinton was running, it was the economy, stupid. As a matter of fact, I'll go back all the way to Calvin Coolidge 100 years ago. One of my favorite lines of all presidents is, "The business of America is business." We need to make sure we have cheap, affordable energy. We have lots of jobs that drives the revenue stream that supports everything else. It makes everybody happy. It keeps them from doing criminal activity. That's something that we've connected with. Youth want to have this generation of youth is actually libertarian for the first time in American history. In other words, they don't want you in their business and they don't want you in their personal life. That's the future of politics, and I think we have to play to that. And I think it's actually the way our Constitution was designed anyways.
Dr. Rich McCormick, our guest on Extra 106.3 in the Morning Extra. What about helping those kids coming out of college with jobs? Because that's another issue. Because I have a kid that's a rising junior. You talk about the economic part of it. Not having a job is a real problem, especially with young men right now. We talked about it on the show earlier today, and I even look at it for my own family, for my own son. What is it that you see that we have to do? Because we're battling AI. We have all kinds of real obstacles.
Yeah, the marketplace is changing dramatically.
Really quickly.
AI is a concern. It will be more of an enhancement than a replacement, though. I think you're going to see businesses actually become more efficient, more profitable, and create more jobs all simultaneously. It's going to for example, me as a doctor, you're not going to replace me as a doctor, but it's going to make me make a much better note. It's going to help me with treatments. It's going to make me bill more efficiently. Maybe eliminate some billers, some delay in reimbursements from insurance companies. But the companies, the early studies that we've seen so far is companies who lay off people thinking AI are going to replace them end up hiring back most of those people because it's just not going to replace people. It's going to make you better. It's going to make you more efficient. I think we're going to have to adopt our market. We need to look at our education system all the way around. We still need people who are going to be plumbers and electricians. You're never going to replace them with AI. By the way, that's a great. If you're listening, guys, out there, and you're looking for the next future, you're going to make as much as a doctor. You're never going to be replaced. There are things out there we need to adapt our education system to. We have an antiquated system where people coming out of college with degrees they'll never use, with tons of debt. That's not a way to look at preparing for a future. If we have the results that we're going to have from Great Britain and Europe and all the other countries investing in the United States, hundreds of billions of dollars, literally trillions of dollars, we should have an economy that's booming. There should be plenty of jobs. And by the way, that forces the minimum wage up without being artificial. And because everybody's going to be competing for employees, not for jobs. And that's going to force the price point for everybody up, and we're going to have a really high living standard still. And I think that's the magic of what Trump's doing right now.
And to reinforce that, as Dr. Rich McCormick is our guest right here on the Morning Extra, when Microsoft says they need 3,000 additional engineers, we have an industry that says we need 500,000 electricians over the next several years. I mean, it's completely different in terms of growth and availability of jobs.
And that's what we're not preparing for. I love technical schools. In fact, I told my middle son the other day he's going to be doing an apprenticeship for being an electrician. And what's funny is he wasted 4 years of college before he did that. Now he got great grades, fine, but you didn't know what you're going to do with that degree. I told him right off the bat, I'm like, I'm not a prophet, but you can kind of see how the economy is going. You can see where the real money can be made. You get a couple of electricians together, you can have yourself a business, and you can make way more than the average professional, more than a doctor. And I think if you look at preparing the youth for the next generation for what the needs are out there, it's predictable, and that's the nice thing about this. But you're right, Microsoft is still hiring. We got a bunch of people hiring, and by the way, that brings up STEM education. We don't produce enough smart kids here in the United States. Our education system is not built well. We have 1 million kids from overseas, 1 million kids that are taking a substantial part of our college education, and they're not coming here for degrees in history. Nothing wrong with that, but like I said, communications or anything else that's not useful. They're coming over here to actually take our engineering jobs where they're going to have 100% placement. They're the ones that are doing computer programming, AI development, that sort of thing, and then bringing it back to their countries. This is one of the beasts that we have with the Ivy League schools. They're bringing over like a quarter of their students are coming from foreign countries, getting great educations, and then going back there and working against us. That's a problem.
Indeed it is. But I love what you said, predictable, because you can see where the boom towns, the boom markets, the boom job markets will be. Final thought here with Dr. Rich McCormick representing Georgia's 7th District. You decided not to run for Senate. Who do you plan to back? Have you made that decision? What will make you, if you've not made the decision, how will you decide? Where does that go?
You know, it's funny. In politics, friends come and go, but enemies accumulate. I got to be really careful that we don't. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true.
I will say this to you, Dr. Rich. I've said if you have 5 haters, make sure you have 5 more by next week, because that means you're doing well. But it's not always that way in politics.
You know, it's funny. I was a popular guy. You know, everybody likes Marines, everybody likes pilots, everybody likes docs. Until I went into politics, and half America instantly hated me.
Media, because of one letter of the alphabet.
Oh my gosh, it's incredible. People who are my friends.
Oh wow!
I mean, I'm talking close friends. People who voted for me at Morehouse, student body president. All of a sudden, like, oh, you're that guy, and it's like, wait a minute, I'm the same guy.
Yeah, right.
And this is where I think it's going to be interesting. There, obviously Kemp is weighing in. The president, I think, will keep his powder dry for a little bit. He's going to want to make sure that we don't have a bloodbath. So maybe he'll weigh in a little bit early, but you got some good candidates out there. I think I'm going to do whatever I can to help whoever comes through the primary win this.
There you go.
Obviously, we did really well in our district. We outperformed everybody, not to brag or anything like that, but we had the highest voter participation easily and the best performance over expectations. And so we have some things to add, but, the main thing is we flip these 2 Senate seats because Georgia should be a red state. We've lost 3 elections now for the Senate, and that can't happen anymore. We got to be careful of our governor's race, too, by the way.
Yeah.
If the Democrats come up with a good candidate and things aren't going perfectly, midterms are a vulnerable time for us, so we just got to be very careful.
Indeed. Dr. Rich McCormick, thank you as always for speaking to the folks in Atlanta and taking the time with us on the Morning Extra. Thank you, sir.
Always a pleasure. Semper Fi, brothers.
There you go.
Thank you.
Good fellow there.